On the alien planet of Cythera, where glowing plants lit up the night like a sea of stars and crystalline rivers shimmered under twin moons, life thrived in vibrant colors. Among the many species that called this world home, the Veilith were considered the most advanced. Their sleek, silvery scales reflected light like mirrors, and their strength was unmatched. But for all their physical prowess, the Veilith valued one thing above everything else: fertility. To them, the ability to reproduce was the ultimate measure of worth. Lyra, a young Veilith female, didn't share the same luster as her peers. Her scales, though beautiful in their own right, lacked the radiant glow that marked vitality in her species. Worse still, she had been diagnosed with infertility, a condition so rare among the Veilith that it was seen as an unforgivable flaw. From the moment the news spread, Lyra became an outcast. Whispers followed her wherever she went, and laughter often erupted when she passed by. She tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the things she loved: studying the bioluminescent flora of Cythera and caring for injured animals in the wild. But no matter how hard she worked or how kind she was, nothing seemed to change the way others viewed her. Kale, a proud and arrogant male, took particular delight in mocking Lyra. He was everything the Veilith admired: strong, confident, and fertile, and he never missed an opportunity to remind Lyra of what she lacked. One sunny afternoon during the Festival of Blooms, Kale found his chance to humiliate her once again. The festival was a grand celebration of fertility, with parades, feasts, and rituals honoring those who contributed to the growth of their population. It was also the day when the Veilith honored couples expecting offspring, showering them with gifts and praise. As the festivities reached their peak, Kale climbed onto a platform in the center of the gathering. His sharp eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Lyra, who stood quietly at the edge, trying to blend into the shadows. A cruel smile spread across his face as he raised his voice. "Today, we celebrate life," he announced, drawing cheers from the audience. "But let us not forget those who cannot partake in this joy, those who are barren." The crowd fell silent, turning their gaze toward Lyra. Her cheeks flushed with shame, but she forced herself to meet Cal's mocking stare. "You stand here," he continued, pointing at her dramatically, "a shadow among us, a reminder of what happens when nature falters. Perhaps you should leave these celebrations and find somewhere else to hide your imperfections." Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by nervous laughter. Some looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Others joined in, jeering and throwing insults. Lyra clenched her fists, fighting back tears. She wanted to scream, to tell them that her worth wasn't defined by whether or not she could have children. But the weight of their judgment pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Just as she thought she couldn't take another moment of humiliation, a soft voice broke through the chaos. "That's enough." Everyone turned to see an unfamiliar figure stepping forward. It was Captain Elias Drake, a human soldier whose ship had crash-landed near the city weeks earlier. Tall and broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes and a weathered face, Elias carried himself with quiet authority. Since arriving on Cythera, he had earned the respect of some Veilith for his resourcefulness and willingness to help. Now, standing between Lyra and the crowd, he radiated calm determination. Kale sneered at the interruption. "This is none of your concern, human. Leave before you embarrass yourself further." Elias ignored him, addressing the crowd instead. "I don't understand your customs fully, but I know cruelty when I see it. If you value life so much, why do you treat someone like this? Are kindness and compassion not important too?" His words hung in the air, silencing even Kale for a moment. Lyra felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, though she dared not believe it would last. For now, Elias's presence offered a small shield against the storm of ridicule. Little did anyone realize, this encounter would set into motion events that would reshape their world forever. As the festival resumed, whispers about the human and the outcast began to spread. What had started as a day of celebration had become something far more complicated. a collision of values, pride, and unexpected alliances. And amidst the turmoil, Lyra allowed herself to wonder if perhaps, just maybe, her story wasn't over yet. The crash of Captain Elias Drake's ship had been a spectacle no one on Cythera could forget. A streak of fire tore across the sky, followed by a deafening explosion as the vessel collided with the dense forests outside the city. When the dust settled, Elias emerged from the wreckage, battered but alive. The Vailith were initially wary of the human stranger. His appearance was so different from theirs, with plain skin instead of shimmering scales and eyes that lacked the reflective glow they associated with strength. Yet curiosity soon outweighed fear, and a small group approached him cautiously. Elias introduced himself in halting but respectful tones, using the universal translator device salvaged from his ship. He explained that he was part of an exploration mission sent to chart uncharted regions of space. His crew had encountered a mysterious energy storm, causing their ship to malfunction and forcing them to make an emergency landing. Tragically, he was the only survivor. Despite his losses, Elias remained composed, focusing on survival and finding a way to repair his damaged vessel. At first, the Vailith treated Elias with suspicion. They questioned his intentions and debated whether to allow him into their city, but it didn't take long for them to see his value. Elias possessed knowledge and skills far beyond what they expected from an outsider. Using tools scavenged from his ship, he fixed broken machinery and improved outdated systems within days. He even devised a solution to stabilize the unstable energy grid powering the city's central dome, a problem that had plagued engineers for months. Word of Elias's abilities spread quickly, earning him grudging respect from many Vailith. However, not everyone welcomed him warmly. Kale, ever the skeptic, viewed Elias as a threat to their way of life. "He's just a human," Kale muttered during one council meeting. "What can he possibly teach us? Our technology is far superior." But despite his protests, the elders allowed Elias to stay, intrigued by the potential benefits of having such a resourceful ally. Lyra, however, saw something in Elias that others missed. While most Vailith interacted with him out of necessity or curiosity, she found herself drawn to his quiet demeanor and unwavering determination. One evening, while wandering near the outskirts of the city, she stumbled upon him working on a damaged irrigation system. She hesitated, unsure if she should interrupt, but Elias noticed her immediately. "Hello," he said, offering a warm smile. "You're Lyra, right? I've seen you around." She nodded, surprised that he remembered her name. "Yes. You're Elias." "That's me," he replied, wiping grease-streaked hands on a cloth. "What brings you here?" Lyra glanced at the half-repaired pipes. "I thought I'd see how you were doing. Everyone talks about your work, but no one really stops to thank you." Elias chuckled softly. "It's fine. I don't do it for thanks. I just want to help." His sincerity struck a chord within her. For years, Lyra had endured ridicule and isolation, yet here was someone who genuinely cared about making things better, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. Emboldened by his kindness, she began visiting him more often, bringing him food or supplies whenever she could spare them. In return, Elias listened intently as she spoke about her love for Cythera's ecosystems and her dreams of studying its unique flora and fauna. Their conversations grew deeper over time. Lyra confided in Elias about the loneliness she felt, the constant judgment from her own people, and the emptiness left by her inability to conceive. To her astonishment, Elias didn't react with pity or discomfort. Instead, he shared stories of his own struggles, losing friends and comrades in battles, feeling like an outsider among the stars, and carrying the weight of survivor's guilt. "You know," Elias said one night as they sat beneath the glowing canopy of trees, "back on Earth, we used to think strength came from physical power or numbers. But I've learned that true strength comes from resilience, the ability to keep going even when the world tries to break you." Lyra looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a failure or an outcast, but as someone worthy of understanding and respect. Meanwhile, Cale watched their growing friendship with mounting frustration. It infuriated him that Elias, a mere human, seemed to command more admiration than any Vaelith. Worse still, Lyra appeared happier than he'd ever seen her, laughing and smiling in ways that made her seem almost radiant. Determined to reclaim his dominance, Cale began devising ways to undermine Elias's influence. He spread rumors questioning the human's motives, accusing him of manipulating the Vaelith for personal gain. Some listened, but many dismissed his claims as jealousy. As weeks passed, Elias and Lyra's bond deepened. Though neither voiced it aloud, they both sensed that their connection went beyond friendship. Elias admired Lyra's resilience and compassion, qualities he believed were rare and precious, and Lyra found solace in Elias's unwavering support, a stark contrast to the disdain she'd faced her entire life. Unbeknownst to them, their relationship was about to face its greatest test. Whispers of their closeness reached the ears of the Vaelith elders, sparking debates about interspecies alliances and cultural traditions. Would their bond be accepted or condemned? As tensions simmered beneath the surface, Elias and Lyra remained unaware of the storm brewing around them, focused instead on the fragile hope they had found in each other. For now, under the twin moons of Cythera, their friendship stood as a quiet rebellion against prejudice and fear, a reminder that connections could form in the most unexpected places, bridging gaps thought impossible to cross. As days turned into weeks, the bond between Elias and Lyra deepened in ways neither of them had anticipated. What began as casual conversations evolved into meaningful exchanges, where they shared not just words but pieces of their souls. They spent hours exploring the glowing forests of Cythera, marveling at its bioluminescent wonders. Lyra pointed out plants with healing properties, while Elias explained how similar species were used on Earth for medicine. Their mutual curiosity created a bridge between their worlds, one that grew stronger with every passing day. Elias admired Lyra's quiet strength. Despite years of ridicule and rejection, she remained kind-hearted and compassionate. Her love for her planet was infectious, and he found himself drawn to her passion in a way he hadn't expected. For Lyra, Elias represented something entirely new, a person who didn't judge her based on what she lacked, but celebrated what she offered. His stories of Earth captivated her, painting vivid pictures of vast oceans, towering mountains, and cities teeming with life. She listened intently, imagining a world so different from her own, yet strangely familiar in its beauty. One evening, as they sat by the edge of a crystalline river, Elias turned to Lyra and said, "You know, I've been thinking about something." "What is it?" Lyra asked, tilting her head curiously. "Back on Earth, there's this saying, home isn't a place, it's the people you share it with. When I first crashed here, I felt lost, like I didn't belong anywhere. But now, being around you makes me feel like maybe I've found a piece of home." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She looked down at the water, her reflection shimmering faintly under the twin moons. "I wish I could show you all the hidden corners of Cythera," she said softly. "There are places even my own people don't know about. Places that make you forget your worries, if only for a little while." Elias smiled warmly. "Then take me there. Show me everything you love about this world. Maybe someday I can return the favor and show you mine." The thought of traveling together filled Lyra with excitement and a tinge of fear. Fear not of danger, but of hope. Hope that someone might truly see her worth. Hope that she could belong somewhere, even if it wasn't among her own kind. Their growing closeness did not go unnoticed. Whispers spread through the city like wildfire. Some Vaelith marveled at the unusual friendship, intrigued by the idea of interspecies camaraderie. Others, however, viewed it with suspicion. Cale, in particular, seethed with jealousy. He couldn't understand why Lyra, whom he considered unworthy, seemed happier than ever. And worse, Why was a human receiving more respect than any Valeth? During a council meeting, Kale voiced his concerns loudly. This human has overstayed his welcome, he declared, pacing back and forth. He meddles in our affairs, repairs things we never asked him to fix, and now he spends his time with her. He shot a disdainful glance toward Lyra, who stood silently nearby. What does he want from us? Our resources, our secrets. The elders exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. While some agreed with Kel's concerns, others argued that Elias had proven himself invaluable. He has helped us in ways no one else could, Elder Scylla interjected calmly. And as for his relationship with Lyra, it is not our place to dictate who she chooses to spend time with. Kale clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. It's unnatural. He snapped. A human and a Valeth. How can anyone think this is acceptable? His outburst earned murmurs of agreement from a few, but most remained silent. The truth was, many were curious about the pair. Their connection challenged long-held beliefs about worthiness and belonging. Even those who once mocked Lyra found themselves questioning whether they had been too harsh. Despite the gossip, Elias and Lyra continued to meet in secret, away from prying eyes. One afternoon, they ventured deep into the forest to a secluded grove where luminescent flowers bloomed year-round. The air buzzed with the sound of tiny insect-like creatures flitting between petals, casting soft glows that danced across the ground. "This is beautiful," Elias said, taking in the sight. "I've never seen anything like it. It's my favorite place," Lyra admitted. "Whenever I feel overwhelmed, I come here. It reminds me that there's still beauty in the world, even when everything else feels dark." Elias nodded thoughtfully. "You're stronger than you realize, Lyra. Most people would have given up after facing what you've been through. But you keep going. That takes courage." Tears welled up in Lyra's eyes, though they weren't tears of sadness. For the first time in years, she felt truly understood. She reached out hesitantly, brushing her fingers against Elias's hand. He didn't pull away. Instead, he gave her a reassuring smile, silently promising that he would always stand by her side. Back in the city, tension simmered. Kel's resentment festered, driving him to act impulsively. Late one night, he confronted Elias outside the workshop, where the human often tinkered with broken machinery. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" Kel growled, stepping closer menacingly, parading around like some kind of hero, stealing our attention. And Lyra. Elias straightened, meeting Kel's glare with calm resolve. "I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm just doing what I can to help. As for Lyra, she deserves to be treated with respect, something you clearly don't understand." Kel sneered. "Respect? She's barren, worthless. You're wasting your time with her." The insult struck a nerve, but Elias refused to rise to the bait. "Worth isn't measured by what someone can or cannot do," he replied evenly. "It's measured by how they treat others. And Lyra is one of the kindest, bravest people I've ever met." Kel's expression darkened, but before he could retort, footsteps echoed nearby. Lyra appeared, having heard the commotion. Seeing the tension between the two men, she stepped forward nervously. "Is everything okay?" Elias glanced at her, then back at Kel. "Everything's fine," he said firmly. "Let's go, Lyra. There's no point arguing with someone who refuses to listen." As they walked away, leaving Kel fuming behind them, Lyra felt a surge of gratitude toward Elias. He had defended her without hesitation, standing up to someone far stronger and more intimidating. In that moment, she realized her feelings for him ran deeper than friendship. But she also knew their path wouldn't be easy. If they wanted to stay together, they would need to face challenges that neither of them could predict. For now, though, under the glow of Cythera's twin moons, they took solace in each other's presence, finding comfort in the unspoken promise that they would face whatever came next, together. The city of Cythera buzzed with anticipation as the council prepared for an important meeting to discuss trade agreements between humans and Valeth. It was a pivotal moment, one that could shape the future of both species. Representatives from Earth had arrived aboard a newly repaired communication shuttle, eager to establish formal ties with the advanced alien civilization. The atmosphere in the Grand Hall was tense but hopeful, filled with murmurs of curiosity and cautious optimism. Elias stood at the edge of the gathering, his posture relaxed yet alert. He had spent weeks preparing for this day, ensuring every detail of the proposal was flawless. But as the discussions began, something unexpected stirred within him. His gaze drifted toward Lyra, who sat quietly in the back of the room. Her presence grounded him, reminding him of everything he had come to value since arriving on Cythera. She wasn't just a friend or ally. She was someone who made him want to be better, to strive for more than survival. And in that moment, Elias realized what he needed to do. When the floor opened for comments, Elias stepped forward without hesitation. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Even Kale, seated nearby with arms crossed, looked surprised by the human's boldness. "Thank you," Elias began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I appreciate the opportunity to speak here today. Before we proceed with these negotiations, I'd like to address something personal, something that has become very important to me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lyra's heart skipped a beat as she watched Elias take a deep breath, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers. "During my time on Cythera, I've learned so much about your culture, your values, and your people. But most importantly, I've come to know someone who embodies the best qualities of this world: kindness, resilience, and an unshakable spirit. That person is Lyra." Gasps echoed throughout the hall. Lyra froze, her cheeks flushing as every head swiveled toward her. Cal's jaw tightened, his fists clenching beneath the table. "I understand that traditions hold great significance for the Vaelith," Elias continued, addressing the elders directly, "and I respect those customs deeply. However, I believe true partnership transcends biology and societal norms. Today, I ask for your blessing to take Lyra as my mate, not because of obligation or expectation, but because I admire her strength, intelligence, and compassion. She has shown me what it means to truly belong, and I want to spend the rest of my life standing beside her." The room erupted into chaos. Some Vaelith whispered in shock, while others exchanged skeptical glances. Cal shot to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "This is absurd," he shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at Elias. "You think you can mock our sacred rituals, a human bonding with a Vaelith? It's unnatural." Elder Scylla raised a hand, silencing the uproar. Her expression was unreadable as she studied Elias carefully. "Captain Drake," she said evenly, "your request is unprecedented. Are you aware of the implications? This union would challenge centuries of tradition and raise questions about interspecies relationships." Elias nodded solemnly. "I understand the gravity of my proposal, but isn't it time to question whether those traditions are serving everyone equally? Lyra has been judged unfairly because of circumstances beyond her control. If anything, her worth shines brighter than anyone else's in this room." Lyra felt tears welling up in her eyes. No one had ever spoken about her with such conviction and love. She wanted to say something, to express how much Elias's words meant to her, but the weight of the moment left her speechless. Kale stepped closer, glaring at Elias. "You have no right to impose your flawed human ideals on us. You don't even understand what it means to be Vaelith." "I may not fully understand your ways," Elias countered calmly, "but I know what it means to care for someone, to stand by them when others turn away. Isn't that what matters most?" The tension in the room was palpable. Finally, Elder Scylla spoke again. "Tradition dictates that any suitor must prove their sincerity through trials. If you wish to bond with Lyra, Captain Drake, you must undergo these tests to demonstrate your commitment." Elias didn't hesitate. "I accept. Whatever challenges lie ahead, I will face them willingly for Lyra." A murmur of approval spread through the crowd. Even Kale seemed momentarily stunned by Elias's resolve. Lyra rose shakily to her feet, her voice trembling as she addressed the elders. I accept his proposal," she said softly. "If he is willing to endure our trials, then I am ready to stand by his side." The decision ignited a mix of reactions. While some Vailith remained skeptical, others whispered words of encouragement. The elders adjourned the meeting to deliberate further, leaving Elias and Lyra alone in the hall. "You didn't have to do this," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're risking so much for me." Elias took her hands in his gaze unwavering. "I'm not risking anything. I'm gaining everything. You've given me a reason to hope again, Lyra. Let me give you the same." Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, overwhelmed by emotion. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not as a failure, but as someone worthy of love and devotion. As they prepared for the trials ahead, whispers of doubt lingered in the air. Kale vowed to expose what he believed was a reckless alliance, determined to prevent the union from succeeding. Yet amidst the uncertainty, Elias and Lyra clung to the promise of a future together, one that defied prejudice and tradition, proving that bonds could form in even the most unlikely places. Under the twin moons of Cythera, their journey toward unity had only just begun. The trials designed to test Elias and Lyra's compatibility were as ancient as they were challenging. Rooted in Vailith tradition, these tests aimed to evaluate not only physical strength, but also mental resilience, teamwork, and respect for Cythera's sacred customs. While some elders believed the trials would deter Elias from pursuing his unconventional bond with Lyra, others secretly hoped he would succeed. His determination had already inspired whispers of change among the people, challenging long-held prejudices. The first trial took place in the Whispering Caverns, a labyrinthine network beneath the city known for its treacherous terrain and glowing bioluminescent predators. The task was simple yet perilous: navigate the caverns and retrieve a crystal shard imbued with energy from the heart of the maze. Failure meant being trapped within the caves, or worse, falling victim to the razor-toothed creatures that lurked in the shadows. Elias and Lyra entered the cavern together, their footsteps echoing against damp stone walls. The air grew colder as they descended deeper, and faint growls reverberated through the tunnels. Lyra moved cautiously, her knowledge of Cytheran ecosystems guiding them away from danger zones. Elias followed closely, his human senses less attuned to the subtle shifts in light and sound, but compensated by sheer focus and instinct. At one point, a sudden tremor caused part of the ceiling to collapse, blocking their path forward. Panic threatened to rise, but Elias quickly sprang into action, using tools salvaged from his ship to stabilize the fallen rocks. "We'll get through this," he assured Lyra, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Together, they found an alternate route, relying on each other's strengths to overcome the obstacle. When they finally reached the chamber housing the crystal shard, they faced their greatest challenge yet: a massive serpentine predator guarding the treasure. Its scales shimmered like liquid silver, matching the glow of the surrounding crystals. Lyra recognized the creature immediately. It was a Scalith, a guardian beast revered in Vailith mythology. Attacking it outright would be seen as sacrilege, so they needed another approach. "Let me try something," Lyra whispered, stepping forward cautiously. She began humming a soft melody, one she remembered from childhood stories about soothing wild beasts. To Elias's amazement, the Scalith paused, its glowing eyes narrowing as if listening intently. Slowly, it lowered its head, allowing Lyra to approach without hostility. With trembling hands, she retrieved the crystal shard while murmuring words of gratitude to the creature. As they emerged victorious from the cavern, cheers erupted from the gathered crowd outside. Even Kale, who had been watching silently nearby, couldn't deny the impressive display of teamwork. Though reluctant to admit it, he felt a flicker of admiration for how seamlessly Elias and Lyra worked together. The second trial tested their problem-solving abilities. They were tasked with solving a series of intricate puzzles embedded in the ruins of an ancient Vailith temple. Each puzzle represented a chapter in Scythian history, requiring deep understanding and collaboration to unlock. For Lyra, who had studied these legends extensively, the challenge felt familiar. But Elias brought a fresh perspective, questioning assumptions and offering creative solutions that complemented her expertise. One particularly difficult puzzle involved aligning holographic projections of constellations to form a specific pattern. As Lyra struggled to decipher the sequence, Elias noticed a recurring motif in the carvings along the walls. "Look at these symbols," he said, pointing them out. "They match the shapes of the stars. Maybe we're supposed to think outside the box." His observation sparked a breakthrough, and together, they completed the alignment just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The temple glowed brightly in response, signaling their success. Spectators gasped in awe, impressed by their ingenuity. The final trial was the most symbolic and the most emotionally charged. It required Elias and Lyra to perform a traditional bonding dance under the twin moons, representing unity and harmony between two souls. Dressed in ceremonial attire adorned with glowing patterns, they stood before the assembled crowd, nerves mingling with anticipation. Kale watched from the sidelines, still simmering with resentment. Determined to sabotage their efforts, he discreetly released a swarm of iridescent moths native to Cythera. Known for their erratic flight patterns, the insects could easily disrupt the delicate choreography of the dance. As the music began and Elias and Lyra started moving in sync, the moths swarmed around them, fluttering chaotically. For a moment, panic threatened to derail their performance. But Elias remained calm, guiding Lyra gently as they adjusted their movements to accommodate the distraction. Their connection shone through every step, turning what could have been a disaster into a mesmerizing display of grace and trust. When the final notes faded, the audience erupted into applause, many visibly moved by the authenticity of their bond. Kale clenched his fists in frustration, realizing his attempt had failed. Yet, as he watched Elias and Lyra embrace amidst the cheers, a strange sensation washed over him. Not quite guilt, but perhaps the stirrings of reflection. With all three trials completed successfully, Elias and Lyra stood before the council once more. The elders conferred quietly before Elder Scylla addressed the crowd. "You have proven yourselves worthy of unity," she declared solemnly. "Though your bond challenges tradition, it also embodies hope for acceptance, cooperation, and growth." Tears streamed down Lyra's face as she turned to Elias, overwhelmed by the journey they had endured. For the first time in years, she felt truly accepted, not because of what she could offer, but simply because of who she was. Yet, even as joy filled the air, Kale lingered in the background, his pride wounded but his mind beginning to shift. Perhaps there was more to learn from this unlikely alliance than he had initially thought. And perhaps, just perhaps, the future held possibilities none of them had dared to imagine. Under the glow of Cythera's twin moons, a new chapter was unfolding, one that promised transformation not only for Elias and Lyra but for their entire world. The aftermath of the trials brought a sense of cautious optimism to Cythera. Elias and Lyra's success had not only proven their compatibility, but also sparked conversations about tradition, worthiness, and the rigid societal norms that governed Vailith life. While many celebrated their union as a symbol of hope, others remained skeptical, clinging to age-old beliefs that infertility rendered someone unworthy of respect or love. Kale was among those who struggled most with the outcome. He couldn't shake the feeling that Elias, a human outsider, had somehow undermined everything he held sacred. Yet, deep down, there was another emotion gnawing at him: guilt. For years, he had mocked and belittled Lyra, treating her as less than nothing because of her inability to conceive. Now, seeing her radiant with happiness alongside Elias, he began to question whether his cruelty had been justified, or if it had simply stemmed from ignorance and fear. It wasn't until a chance encounter in the city archives that Cal's perspective truly began to shift. While searching for historical records to support his arguments against interspecies bonding, He stumbled upon an old manuscript detailing genetic adaptations within certain Vailith populations. The document described how some individuals, like Lyra, possessed heightened cognitive abilities linked to their infertility, a phenomenon considered rare but valuable in ancient times. According to the text, these individuals were once revered as visionaries and problem solvers, their unique traits seen as blessings rather than flaws. Cale froze, rereading the passage several times to ensure he hadn't misunderstood. Could it be true? Had society misjudged Lyra, and others like her, for centuries? The weight of this revelation hit him hard, forcing him to confront the possibility that his ridicule had been based on falsehoods perpetuated by outdated prejudices. Determined to understand more, Cale sought out Dr. Moraine, one of the few scientists still studying Vailith genetics. Though initially reluctant to engage with someone known for arrogance and hostility, Moraine eventually agreed to answer his questions after sensing genuine curiosity in his tone. "What you've discovered is correct," Moraine explained, pulling up holographic charts filled with complex data. Infertility in certain Vailith isn't a defect. It's an adaptation. These individuals often exhibit extraordinary mental acuity, creativity, and empathy. Unfortunately, over time, our culture shifted its focus toward fertility as the sole measure of worth, erasing much of this knowledge. Cale listened intently, his mind racing with implications. If what Moraine said was true, then Lyra wasn't just different, she was exceptional, and he had spent years tearing her down instead of appreciating her gifts. Meanwhile, preparations for Elias and Lyra's bonding ceremony continued amidst growing excitement. The event was set to take place beneath the twin moons, with both humans and Vailith attending to witness the historic occasion. As word spread, so did discussions about the broader significance of their union. Some saw it as a step toward bridging gaps between species. Others viewed it as proof that love could transcend even the strictest boundaries. Lyra, though thrilled by the support she now received, couldn't help but feel conflicted about Cale. Despite everything he had done, she sensed a change in him recently, subtle shifts in behavior that hinted at remorse. When she spotted him lingering near the outskirts of the festival grounds one evening, she approached cautiously. "Cale," she said softly, drawing his attention. "Is something wrong?" He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable under her gaze. Finally, he sighed heavily. I need to say something, Lyra. Something I should have said long ago." Her heart raced as she waited for him to continue. "Go on," she encouraged gently. "I was wrong," Cale admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I said to you, all the things I made you believe about yourself, they weren't true. You're not worthless, Lyra. You never were. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry." Tears welled up in Lyra's eyes as she processed his words. She had dreamed of hearing such an apology for years, yet now that it had come, she felt only compassion. "Thank you for saying that," she replied quietly. "But forgiveness isn't what matters right now. What matters is moving forward, together. Help me show our people that worth isn't defined by biology. That's how we can make things better." Cale nodded, humbled by her grace. "Tell me what to do," he said earnestly. "How can I help?" For the first time in their lives, Lyra and Cale stood united, not as rivals, but as allies working toward a common goal. Together, they began spreading awareness about the genetic adaptations uncovered by Moraine's research, challenging societal norms, and advocating for greater acceptance of diversity among the Vailith. As the day of the bonding ceremony arrived, anticipation filled the air. Beneath the glowing twin moons, Elias and Lyra exchanged vows, their voices steady and full of promise. The ceremony symbolized far more than their personal commitment. It represented a new era of understanding and cooperation between species. Cale attended the event, standing quietly among the crowd. Though he still harbored doubts about interspecies relationships, he couldn't deny the profound impact Elias and Lyra's bond had already made. Watching them stand side by side, radiating strength and unity, He realized that change didn't happen overnight, but it started with small acts of courage and compassion. When the ceremony concluded, cheers erupted across the gathering. Elias and Lyra turned to face the crowd, holding hands tightly. Their journey was far from over, but they faced whatever lay ahead with unwavering determination, and the knowledge that they weren't alone. Under the twin moons of Cythera, a ripple of transformation spread outward, touching hearts and minds. And as the night stretched on, hope burned brighter than ever, promising a future where bonds beyond stars could flourish, even in the unlikeliest of places. The bonding ceremony of Elias and Lyra marked a turning point not only for their lives, but also for Cythera itself. Beneath the radiant glow of the twin moons, the event unfolded as a celebration of unity, resilience, and hope. The Vailith gathered alongside human representatives from Earth, their differences momentarily set aside in favor of shared joy. The air buzzed with music, laughter, and the soft hum of glowing flora, creating an atmosphere that felt almost magical. Elias stood tall beside Lyra, his hand clasping hers firmly. Though he had faced countless challenges to reach this moment, none of them compared to the overwhelming sense of fulfillment he now felt. For years, he had wandered among the stars, searching for meaning after losing his crew and home. Now, standing on an alien world under unfamiliar skies, he realized he had found something far greater than he ever imagined: a family, a purpose, and a future worth fighting for. Lyra, too, was overcome with emotion. Tears streamed down her face as she gazed at the crowd, many of whom once mocked her but now cheered her name. Her heart swelled with gratitude, not just for Elias, who had believed in her when no one else did, but for the ripple effect their bond had created. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about proving that love, acceptance, and understanding could transcend even the deepest divides. Cale watched silently from the sidelines, his expression thoughtful. He had spent so much of his life clinging to pride and tradition, convinced that strength and fertility defined worth. But witnessing Elias and Lyra's union forced him to confront how wrong he had been. As the ceremony reached its climax, Cale stepped forward unexpectedly, drawing curious glances from those around him. "May I speak?" he asked, addressing the elders presiding over the event. When they nodded, he cleared his throat nervously. "I don't usually say things like this," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "But today has shown me that we've been blind. We've judged others based on outdated beliefs, ignoring the qualities that truly matter: kindness, intelligence, and courage." He turned to Lyra, meeting her eyes directly for the first time without mockery or disdain. "Lyra, I'm sorry for everything I've done. You are not a shadow. You're a beacon. And you've taught us all that there's more to life than what we can produce. Thank you for showing us another way." The crowd erupted into applause, moved by Cale's unexpected apology. Lyra smiled warmly, nodding in acknowledgement. She knew forgiveness wouldn't erase the past, but it was a step toward healing, and proof that even the hardest hearts could change. In the days following the ceremony, the impact of Elias and Lyra's bond continued to spread. Inspired by their example, the Vailith began reevaluating long-held prejudices, particularly regarding infertility. Dr. Moraine presented her findings to the council, urging them to incorporate genetic diversity into their societal values. Slowly but surely, attitudes shifted. Those once marginalized found themselves embraced, their unique traits celebrated rather than scorned. Elias and Lyra became ambassadors for interspecies cooperation, traveling across Cythera to share their story. They visited schools, councils, and remote villages, fostering dialogue between humans and Vailith. Their message was simple yet powerful. Differences didn't have to divide. They could enrich. By working together, two species could achieve far more than either could alone. Back on Earth, news of their alliance sparked widespread interest. Humanity marveled at the possibility of peaceful coexistence with alien civilizations, inspired by the idea that mutual respect could bridge even the widest gaps. Scientists collaborated with Vailith researchers, exchanging knowledge and technology that benefited both worlds. Trade agreements flourished, leading to unprecedented advancements in medicine, energy, and space exploration. Yet, despite their growing influence, Elias and Lyra remained grounded. They cherished quiet moments together, whether wandering through Cythera's glowing forests or stargazing beneath the twin moons. Their connection deepened with each passing day, strengthened by shared experiences and unwavering support. One evening, as they sat by the crystalline river where they had first bonded, Elias turned to Lyra with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think we'll always face challenges?" he asked, "even with all the progress we've made?" Lyra nodded, her gaze reflecting the shimmering water. "Probably. Change isn't easy, and not everyone will agree with us. But that's okay. What matters is that we keep trying, to listen, to learn, and to grow. Together." Her words resonated deeply with Elias, reminding him why their journey was so important. It wasn't about erasing conflict or achieving perfection. It was about building bridges where none existed before, about showing that hope could flourish even in the darkest corners of the universe. As months passed, Cythera entered a new era of peace and innovation. The city thrived, its skyline illuminated by bioluminescent towers and clean energy grids designed collaboratively by humans and Valeth. Children played freely in parks, filled with hybrid plants engineered to purify the air, while scholars studied ancient texts alongside cutting-edge research. Even Kale found a renewed sense of purpose, dedicating himself to advocating for inclusivity and empathy within his community. For Elias and Lyra, every sunrise brought fresh opportunities to inspire others and strengthen their bond. They dreamed of exploring the stars together, introducing humanity and Valeth to other civilizations, and spreading their message of unity. The road ahead would undoubtedly hold obstacles, but they faced them with courage and determination, knowing they weren't alone. Under the twin moons of Cythera, their story served as a testament to the power of love, acceptance, and resilience. Bonds beyond stars were possible, even in the most unlikely places, and they proved that hope could light the way, no matter how vast the darkness. And so, as the galaxy turned and new horizons beckoned, Elias and Lyra stood ready to embrace whatever came next, hand in hand, united not just by fate but by choice. Their legacy would endure, a reminder that even in the vastness of space, connections built on compassion and understanding could transform the world, and perhaps, one day, the entire universe.